Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Love of Life podcast. And today's episode is going to be very special. We have comedian John Branyan with us today. We're super excited to have him. John, the first question that came to my mind earlier as I was thinking about what to ask you, because we actually have a plethora of various questions, is
Do you?
we do. And so growing up, you could be a doctor, a lawyer, firefighter. There's all these various things you can be growing up. You
Hmm.
decided you wanted to grow up and make people laugh for a living, and you've done so successfully for over 25 years. What was the genesis of that? How did you get started thinking, hey, I want to make people laugh for a living, and you're good at it?
I did not decide that I was going to be a comedian, so you are incorrect about that, Jesse.
Perfect. Perfect.
Um, yeah, I just got a wild idea. I was watching comedy one night, and the guy on stage was, I don't even remember who it was, but he was not that good. And I turned around to my wife and I said, "Man, I think I'm funnier than this guy." And she goes, "I think you are too." And I said, "I wonder how you do this." And I had no idea how to do comedy. And so I just called the comedy club and said, "Hey, how do you get on stage to do comedy?" I didn't know anything. And well, you have to get on the open mic wait list and so on. So I got on the open mic wait list and I went down and get a comedy just to get it out of my system, just because I thought, yeah, I'm going to try this once and then be done with it. But it went way better than I expected it would go. And the guy who was hosting it came over afterwards and said, "That was your first time?" And I said, "Yeah, well, it was my first time doing stand up." I didn't tell him it wasn't my first time holding a microphone and saying things to a group of people.
It's a big difference.
Um, yeah, there's a difference. It wasn't the first time I'd ever directed or addressed a crowd. But anyway, he said you should come back, and so I did, and eventually I got to where I was asked to MC at the local comedy club, and so I started MCing, and that was it. I never really had to tour the comedy clubs, because if I had, I probably wouldn't have. I probably wouldn't have become a comedian. But it all worked out that I could stay local. I'm getting as much work as I wanted. The people that owned the clubs liked me for some reason. They were not Christian people, but they took a shining to me. And and every time I finished up a week, Patty would open up her book and go, "Hey, I don't have anything else for you, so I'm going to put you in here and here and here and here and here." So I just had tons of stage time, uh, and and that was how I got started. I had absolutely no desire to be a touring comic, but God had other plans apparently. So
Was it a clean comedy club that you started out at?
no, 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 no. It was just a regular old comedy club full of regular old people.
Okay, so what
Um,
is that like when you go to, because you're a Christian comedian and you go to some of these comedy clubs, and I've been myself even lately, and it's very different comedy than a clean comedian would present.
right. Well, I decided early on. My conversation with God years ago was, if you ever give me a platform, I will honor that platform. I didn't know what it was going to be. Um, but I made a vow that I was never going to say anything from stage that I didn't want my children to hear. I didn't want a video being played back, and it's like, "Hey, you got to get the kids out of the room because Dad's about to say some stuff." And so everything I did was clean enough to work, in church. But at the same time, I didn't want to be. I wanted to be good enough that I could be on a secular stage, um, and and still not do dirty material. I didn't want to be exclusive and narrow and only have this work at church,
Sure.
because church people can be, they're a little biased, and they're very forgiving. I mean, you go in and do comedy at church, and they will tell you that you're wonderful if you're not. And I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be good enough to where I could go to the secular comedy clubs and do my act and have people laugh, and then and then I could do the same act at church, and so that's what I do.
So the very first time you decided to do that open mic, what did you do to prepare?
Oh, I just told the same sort of stories that I tell when I'm sitting at the table with my family or when I was talking with guys at work or whatever. Just this, uh, when I would talk, they would laugh, and so I'm like, well, I guess I'll just do the stuff that I do that makes my friends laugh and see how that works at the club. And so I had some material about not being very athletic. Um, I still do it sometimes, but not very often. Um, Not because I'm athletic now, but because I've got other material. Uh, but yeah, I only had 3 minutes, and that doesn't seem like very much time, but that's a long time if you're not funny. And so I told a couple of stories, and they laughed, which I was not necessarily expecting. And so I just told the same sort of stuff that I talk about when I'm not standing on stage.
Sure. That's
Did
awesome.
did you so was that it after that first time you just sort of caught the bug of comedy and it since never left, or has there been times where you've tried to go, okay, you're into it for 6 months, the first 6 months, the first year went by. Was there ever a time early on where you thought, okay, that was fun, that was good, but maybe there's not a career particularly in this?
Well, I always knew that it was not going to be a hobby. If I mean, it wasn't going to be something that I was going to do just for kicks and grins, because at the time I had 2 kids and a wife, and I had a full time job, and I didn't have the time or the resources to dedicate to. I didn't golf either. I just I didn't have the money or the time for a hobby. And so it's like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to make some money doing it. And when I got hired to be the house MC, that was great because I got to keep my day job, and then I got to double dip and get paid to go and do comedy in the evenings. And so I didn't have to quit. I didn't have to go on the road. I didn't have to leave my family. It was wonderful for a number of years. For, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. That was all I did. Was I just MC'd a week at the club about every month or so, and work my day job.
Awesome. Was there a point where you quit your day job and did comedy full time?
Yeah. I got to the point where there was a show that I was doing out in Tulsa. A guy saw my act and wanted to build a one man show around it, and so he was flying me out every week to Tulsa to do this show. And I was still trying to work my day job at the same time, and you just got to be. I felt bad. I was taking advantage of my employer, who was very nice to me to let me do that. And so I just went in and told him, "Hey, I think I'm going to find somebody to replace me here. I worked at a print shop. I'm going to find somebody to replace me here, and then I'm going to go do this comedy. And I'll probably come crawling back and beg for my job in about 6 months." And they said, "Okay, you can come back." And that was 30 years ago. So,
Awesome.
You
yeah,
haven't come crawling back.
I haven't come crawling back.
You just keep going. They say that bombing is an experience that every comedian at some point kind of goes through. Have there been times in the past where you do that same material, but for that particular audience on that particular night, it didn't work and it just flopped, or you didn't get the laughs that you wanted?
Yeah.
Has that happened? And when it does, or if it has, what is that experience like?
Oh, sure. It's happened many times, and it's about what you would expect. I mean, everybody has nightmares about being up on stage and saying things to the audience, and it's not going well. It's awful. The first few times it happens, it's really devastating. But it's par for the course. It's a thing that happens, and pretty quickly, if you're going to make it at any, if you're going to have any success as a stand-up or a speaker, but especially as a stand-up, the thing that sets stand-up apart from other performances is that you get immediate feedback as to how well you're doing, and that nothing else does that. Your preaching doesn't do that. Music doesn't do that. You don't really know how well things are going immediately. I mean, you have to. But with stand up, you do every single punchline. You're The audience is voting on whether or not you're doing well or not. And some audiences are just will not go with you. I mean, they like this one and they don't like that one, and this one was not that great, and this was not that great. And so, uh, yeah, when things are not going well, you just have to be a pro. You just have to go, well, okay, this is going to be a really long show, and so I'm just going to mark time. I'm just going to step through the material. I know this material works. I know this is decent stuff. It's just that for whatever reason, we are not making friends here tonight. And
Do you address that when you're doing
oh,
if
sure,
do you kind
yeah,
of go, oh, the audience is really having fun tonight, aren't we? Or are there various quips or various things that you'll say
yeah,
that will kind of identify, okay, this is what's happening right now?
yes. And I always blame them. I never take any of the blame myself.
That's
Um,
interesting because we've read a lot of books on comedy in the last few months about like Gene Perrette and various past
mhm,
comedians, and they've said before, like in their world, they wouldn't turn around on the audience. That's not exactly something to do. But we've also watched a lot of stand up, and that is something that they do. There's a kind of a mixed opinion that what I'm trying to say among
yeah.
comedians. Do you ever attack the audience for, you know?
Well, I don't attack them, and it depends on how things are. It depends on what's happening. I mean, you have to be able to read the room, and audiences have. There's a number of reasons why audiences don't respond. Sometimes it's because they don't like you, but that's pretty rare. I found most of the time human beings are on your side, you know, and if they're not making a lot of noise, my experience has been that there's something else going on. It's either they weren't prepared for it. I've had a number of corporate shows where the people have hired me to come in and entertain this group that has no idea that a comedian is coming in to entertain them, and it's after dinner and they're worn out. They've been at workshops or whatever. They've been talking about insurance or aluminum siding all day, and they've just had it up to here with meetings, and so you can't attack those people for being tired and strung out and so on.
Yeah.
I've also done a lot of shows for Amish people. You just you just can't set the bar up here. They're not going to react the same way that a comedy club audience is going to react. And so generally what I do is um, is I do acknowledge what's going on in the room because they know. And so there's this awkward tension that happens if I don't say something about it. Then they're like, does he even know? Does he think that this is going well? What's going on? So I have to tell them that I know it's not going well. Otherwise they're going to think I'm an idiot. And so usually what I do is I say, all right, you guys, uh, I have been a stand-up comedian for, and I'll say whatever it is. I've been a stand-up comedian for 30 years. You have been an audience for 5 minutes. This is not going very well. Guess whose fault it is? And usually, just saying stuff like that, I smile when I say it, but you acknowledge it. And once it's been acknowledged, then we all kind of come together and go, oh, okay, well, this is not going. So let's be better about this. Um, Usually that helps, but
Have you
by and
won
large,
have you won over an audience that way? So it
yeah,
wasn't going well up to that moment. You obviously bring attention to it, and then it kind of picks up from there
yeah,
as you
yeah.
continue your act.
The audiences, what they want is they want to be comfortable. And so if things aren't going well, then they're uncomfortable. It's not that they're angry at you. They don't even know you. It's not they don't hate you. Um, you don't hate people who are trying to make you laugh. Now when they fail, but they're at least trying to make you laugh, and so there's some sympathy. They immediately start to imagine what it would be like to be you, and they're like, oh, that would be awful. This guy is enduring the most awful thing in the entire world. And so the longer they think that, the more of a downward spiral we go into. So the goal is to try to make them feel comfortable, and strength does that. If I communicate to them, hey, you know what, if you guys don't laugh, that's fine. And I'll say that. I'll go, this is your show. You can do whatever you want. You want to get up and walk around. If you guys have brought a deck of cards, you want to break them out, that's fine with me, because I have, I'm just, usually I'll say, I've made it this far without you. I can go the distance. So, but just that sort of confidence makes them go, oh, okay, well, he's not nervous. He's not scared. So I guess we can relax.
That's very interesting. Yeah, it makes sense though.
Yeah, they just don't want to be awkward. And if things are awkward, you have to, as quickly as you can, you have to go, hey, look, this is not a big deal. I'm going to survive this. This is not like an open artery here. This is just a few minutes of me telling jokes and you not thinking they're funny. So,
Perspective.
yeah.
So now you have a lot of material that you know works, that is good material, and where you can gauge if an audience isn't laughing, they just don't get this. But when you try new stuff, are you nervous at this point to try new stuff, or that's totally fine? And then how long do you give new material to say, okay, this is working or this isn't going to work?
Um, well, gosh, I have different criterion for what material works.
Mm,
The comedy club set is rapid fire, and you have to have a lot of laughs one after the other, and so it's a lot more disjointed. You basically go from laugh to laugh to laugh, and segues and so on don't matter as much in the comedy club, because you're just there to get from one funny thing to the next. All right, and so if I've got a bit that doesn't work as well, doesn't get as big a laugh, then I won't use that in a club set. But I might still use it when I'm doing some sort of a corporate thing or doing a church thing, because that's a little more like a lesson. I mean, the you don't have to have this rapid fire, in church or at corporate shows. You can get away with a little slower pace. You can have a little more thoughtful uh, material. You can have things that don't necessarily generate belly laughs, but they make people, they're mildly amusing. I mean, all of that stuff is still legitimate, depending on what audience you're talking to. You're not necessarily trying to just blister them with, you know, one joke after another.
No. How do ideas and jokes form in your mind, and what is the writing process like for you? Like when your kid does something ridiculous or funny, and then you sort of maybe you take that as an idea, you embellish it a little bit, you add some wording behind it. What is your process for obtaining the jokes and the ideas and sort of making them work into the magic that is John Branyan?
It's always I'm always working on material, whether and not even intentionally. It's just always, it's part of the way that my brain works. And I actually wrote a book, and I wrote a comedy course about that. You were at that course,
I was,
one of
yes, it was
one
great.
of the workshop, like the introductory
Yes,
part.
yes.
But yeah, the process for writing material is, it's I used to say it's in everybody. I don't necessarily believe that anymore, but I do think that the way that our brains are wired up, the way that our minds work, is um, is this mystical, unfathomable process that happens, and you can learn how to do it. You can learn how to turn it on and off. And there are people who will say, Well, I don't know. I have to wait for inspiration. I have to wait for inspiration. I don't have to wait for inspiration anymore. I know how it works. And it's basically just observing what's going on, and then you look at it from a slightly different angle. You look at it from or from the opposite direction, because most people don't do that. Most people are taught, to go through this logical progression of steps in order to get from, I've got to mow the lawn today. And so what do I have to do? Well, I got to make sure that I've got gas and put gas in the mower and so on. But that's how you that's how you live. That's how you get the lawn mowed. But the comedian goes, well, the yard has to be mowed. And then you immediately go, well, why does the yard have to be mowed? Well, because we want the grass to be shorter. Well, why do we want the grass to be shorter? What's wrong with longer grass? And that starts a different chain of thoughts from I need to mow the lawn. If I'm going to mow the lawn, that's a different progression of thoughts than I need to make the grass shorter. Because now making the grass shorter, there's a bunch of different ways that you could pull that off. You see that those are the So
Mm-hmm.
material comes from one way of thinking, and material doesn't come from the other way of thinking.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. And so I've heard some comedians, they write everything down and they do it by hand. Some people do it on a computer. I recently saw a video. Bill Burr apparently doesn't write anything down, which I find that unbelievable. And just kind of, I mean, he might not write it down, but that's like, wow, that's pretty amazing. Considering he could just stand up there and essentially riff, then I would imagine, if you're not physically writing it down. But what is your process? Do you take notes? Is everything
I
word for word?
do, I do. I don't have it with me. Um, it's on my phone. Yeah, I keep notes, but my notes are usually like one or two little short lines.
Mhm.
And it would be something like mowing the grass is making the lawn shorter, and that would be enough to make me go, oh yeah, I remember what that was. And then I would process it. I don't usually write out long form,
Mhm.
um, because for me, it's it's difficult. It feels like a script, and that it just doesn't work organically. I don't even take a set list up with me because it sort of makes me it sort of distracts me,
Okay.
and I like to be able to kind of
Yeah.
feel it out.
Okay, so then that idea and juxtaposing that with your very famous Three Little Pigs Shakespeare.
Well, that was written out. Yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering. I'm like, so you're just
Yeah,
doing
I
that?
wrote that
That's
out.
just ad-libbed every time you do that one? Okay,
No,
that
no.
one's written out.
But well, the goal, the that's a great question. The goal is to make it look like it's ad libbed. The greatest thing that a person can say after a set is to walk up and go, "How much of that did you just make up on the spot?"
Right.
Well, the answer is none of it. I mean, it's all material. I've thought about it and I've processed through it, and eventually it does become sort of a rote recital of this memory, because only certain words work. You figure that out, and there's a way you have to say it in order to make it work.
Mhm.
Um, but that comes over with just doing it. But the goal with the Three Little Pigs even was people are supposed to think, yeah, and I even sort of set it up this way. I say, well, what would it be like if we had fairy tales from the 16th century? Those children's books were geared to that. What would that be like? Well, I'm sort of priming them to think that I'm just now musing about this. Like just now it occurred to me how weird it would be. It would be something like this, and then the audience is like, "Man, he just must be making this up because he just thought of that idea." Remember? And so there's some deception in stand up.
So you do also material about your family. Do you ever think like, oh, I'm specifically thinking of that child. I really thought that was
Hmm.
wonderfully funny. Do you think, oh, I might offend this child? Or like, is that something that you think about because you're going to do these things on stage, or your family takes it in stride and, uh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my family, it's almost like a competition to see who can be the dumbest, who can get made fun of, who can be the target, who could do something that will draw the attention and the ridicule of the rest of the family. And so, no, nobody gets their feelings hurt. Nobody gets their panties in a bunch. Um,
That's good.
That's
That's
very
yeah.
good. A family with very
Well,
thick skin.
it's it's by uh, it's such a healthy way to raise children. I mean, children who are raised with in an environment where they are laughed at for doing funny things that they do. Not everybody gets that. Not every child is raised in that environment. We had a My daughter has a story about teaching the toddler class at church, and the kids were sitting in a circle, and she was talking about all the animals that God made, and they were making the sounds that the animal. And what does a cow say? Well, moo moo moo, and they would go around. And what does a dog say? Woof woof woof, bark bark, all around. Well, God made frogs too. What does a frog say? And then it went ribbit 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 croak ribbit ribbit. Got to this little guy here on the end, this little like 2-year old, 2.5-year old kid makes a perfect bullfrog sound. He just pulls off a bullfrog, and everybody fell apart. The teachers and the aides and everybody thought it was hysterical. He burst into tears because he thought everybody was making fun of him,
uh,
and so she had to explain to mom when she picked him. Yeah, we had a little bit of a crisis. He cried but he made this bullfrog sound, and so. Uh, so after that incident, I became aware of how important it is to just members of the family to recognize the things that are uh, on stage. I call it you're stupid, or recognize there's something stupid in every single one of us that God put there, so other people would laugh at us. That's the purpose of it. And the quicker we can recognize what our stupid is, and then be willing to let other people laugh at it, the sooner that stupid ceases to have power over us. Now we don't get our feelings hurt, and we don't crumble, and we don't burst into tears. This is a thing that God has given me that everybody else is going to laugh at me for, and that's as it should be.
Yeah. Yeah. You have a bit about kind of that we were watching recently about how essentially God made humor, and you point out in your stand up some of the various things that God has made humorous in us, like farting, like our bodily noises and things of that nature. And
Oh,
and you do it in a very illustrative, funny, great way. Um, but maybe you could talk just a little bit about that. Just as creatures, God has this sense of humor that is ironic and funny and
well, yeah, I can't understand why. Because I do get the question. Now, people will say, do you think God has a sense of humor? Do you think God thinks that's funny? And I can't even calculate that vector. I mean, it's just such a weird thing to ask. It's like, well, why do you think we laugh? What do you think the purpose is? Have you ever thought about, usually they haven't, but you ever thought about what an odd thing it is to laugh for at stuff? I mean, what is it what is that mechanism? And I think it's because there is tragedy as well, and tragedy and comedy are linked together. Wherever you find the most uproarious laughter, it's almost invariably linked to something um, horrifically unpleasant. The main things that comedy uses, the mechanism that comedy uses, and this isn't me. This is stuff. If you go back and read like ancient Greek philosophers, and they would write about comedy and how you do comedy, it's always it's sex, it's bodily functions, and it's embarrassment and humiliation, pain and suffering. Those are the things that you always go to when you're creating comedy. And so, yeah, comedy has the possibility of offending people because it's poking at the things that are causing people to suffer. And so there's oftentimes someone will go, I don't think that's appropriate. This is not the appropriate time to do that. And I understand what they're saying. They're saying, well, we're dealing with some emotions right now, and comedy feels like irreverent and inappropriate. And I would say that that's the most important time for it. You know, when somebody's really, really struggling, if you can distract them from that with some well placed humor, that's why God gave us the ability to do it.
Do you find ever, especially when you're in front of a secular audience, that talking about God makes your audience hostile?
Nah.
No, they're fine
Um,
with it.
nah. Um, most of the time, when I do it, I, I'm not really, I'm kind of preaching, but I think it's the truth. And I think if it's not a sales pitch, it's not a, hey, I think this is going to resonate with you guys, so I'm saying it. I think they can tell that this is genuinely what I believe. And so, for the most part, secular people are not as, they're not averse to religion. I think sometimes we Christian people think that, yeah, you mention God to secular people and they're really going to get mad. Not in my experience. I used to teach Sunday school, and when I was working at the club, sometimes the wait staff and the managers would go to this tavern after the show and hang out. Occasionally, I would go with them, and I'm sitting there at the table, and they're all, you know, and these are gay people and people that are shacking up and people that cuss like sailors. I mean, there's no Christians anywhere at this table, and and so we would have a conversation for a while, and it would get to be late. It'd get to be 1 a.m. And I would get up, and I remember getting up, and I said, "Okay, I got to go home. I got to teach Sunday school in the morning." And and I sort of said it hoping that they would laugh, you know, hoping that they would think it was funny. But they didn't. They go, "All right, Brandon." He goes, "John's got to go home and teach Sunday schools. He's out of here. All right, we'll see you next week." They didn't say a word. And I'm driving home, and I'm thinking about that. And I'm like, okay, those guys didn't have a problem with me teaching Sunday school. But I wonder how many people in my Sunday school class would have a problem if I brought the gay guy into there. Um,
Interesting.
and to be fair, my Sunday school class probably would have been okay with that. But there's this, I don't know. Sometimes the church thinks that the world is going to be more hostile about uh, religion than they actually are. I think that sometimes they're you. I've never had anybody get mad. The only time I've ever had anybody be somewhat uh, well, I have lost work because of my views on religion. But what's interesting about it is there's only been one secular organization that decided they didn't want me anymore. The others have all been churches of various denominations who didn't like a particular religious point of view, and so they decided that I couldn't be part of their platform anymore.
Mm.
Interesting.
Yeah,
It
it's the
sounds
church
like a
people.
Yeah.
it is the church people.
Church
They're
people. Church
I
people hate religion.
I
Yeah,
know those people. I
yeah,
grew up in the church. We grew up in the church, and yeah, there's definitely those people in
yeah. Me
various
too.
denominations, even. So, yeah, I would be remiss in not asking you for the watching audience, what animal is that there in the background? That's a giant rat, armadillo. What is that guy?
Well, it's just a possum.
A possum.
Yeah,
Oh,
I thought
yeah.
it was a
happens.
blanket.
Really?
Yeah,
Is that what you thought?
I did.
Yeah,
Is
it's
is
my
is
son-in-law's idea of a perfect Christmas gift for me.
okay.
I have run-ins with possums. It's sort of in my, I'm not sure why, but possums show up in my life from time to
Do
time.
you
And
exterminate them or do you love them? As you have this nice little cuddly guy behind you. Is
I had to relocate two of them, and that's why I got this.
yeah, yeah,
Those
yeah.
possums were, yeah, they show up, and
Oh
so
yeah.
I and they're little ones about like this size. This is actually a little bigger than the possum that showed up at my house, and so he was there in the bottom of a trash can, and he was just looking up at me. And my son-in-law, Luke, who exterminates moles in the most vicious and horrific manner. He's got this tool, so he doesn't think anything about shooting groundhogs or skewering moles and stuff. So I told him, man, I got a possum in the bottom of my trash can. What should I do? And he goes, just pick up a rock and throw it in there and crush him. I'm like, dude, I can't. I'm not you. I can't do that. So I got a live cage and I took him out to the park and I turned him loose. And he was back the next day. The same he came back. So I had to take him all the way out, past the city limits. And that was when I got the possum from Luke. So
Oh, that's great.
That's
That's
awesome.
great. Talk to us a little bit about your book.
which one?
I think
This
I think there's one behind there. Is that one of yours that you've written?
Life is Hardy Hard, or
Mhm.
that's backwards. Um, this is basically my philosophy of comedy, and it's also the process that I use to create material. So both of those things are in here, and sprinkled with stories about
Where can
funny
people
stuff
find the
that's
book?
on Amazon. You can go to my website, and it'll take you to the link.
Okay, and that would be johnbranyan.com.
JohnBranyan.com.
Okay,
Yep. So
wonderful.
I'm set out to answer the question, how do you get material, which is how you started this interview. Where does it come from? And so I wrote this book and accidentally came up with a solution that will make everybody's life immeasurably better. And so that was just an unintended consequence of explaining how my comedy writing system works.
That's wonderful. We will have to pick a copy of that
Yeah,
up.
we will.
We will have to do
That's
that.
awesome.
And talk to us also. You mentioned briefly about the thing that you do on Zoom. You bring
Comedy
the
workshop.
comedy workshop. Talk to us a little bit about that and where people can find it.
That's also on my website. I have various workshops for different reasons, but they all center around writing comedy or creative thinking, brainstorming, so on and so forth. But they can fit into an hour. I can do half day seminars. I can do groups. I can do all of it. But the short pitch is that I can make it so you don't have writer's block anymore. I never have writer's block. I can write about anything, anytime, at the drop of a hat, and you can too. I can I can show you how to do this. The beautiful part is that I'm not teaching you anything. I'm just showing you what's already happening in your brain. And once you realize what's happening, it's like having a superpower. You're like, oh, I really can write anything, anytime. And it's like, yes, you can. I will. It can be taught. So,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
And as you have said, and I've heard you say on different that meeting and also another meeting we're a part of, AI is coming and people are scared and it's going to take over all the jobs apparently, but it's
Yeah.
not going to take over comedy, right? Is that
No, AI, people who haven't spent any time with AI are the ones who are afraid of it. If you spend any time at all with AI trying to get it to do an actual task, you will realize that AI is pretty stupid. I mean, it makes a lot of mistakes and contradicts itself all the time, which is fine for comedy. But AI doesn't. It does not reason, or it reasons and then abandons what it's concluded. It's super weird. It's hard to describe, but if you go into AI and you start to have a longer conversation with it. For example, I asked AI. I was working on Chat GPT. They have these things called GPTs where you can actually build a little framework that's basically a big long prompt, and you can give that to it, and then it will respond with that prompt every time you open that GPT. So you don't have to keep re-prompting it. It's sort of like training it how to behave in a conversation. So so I worked a number of hours on this GPT. Me and Chat GPT are working together on this. And it's got a thing called Canvas now, where it's like a word processor that's built into it, but it's a word processor that's really really bad. It's a word processor that is possibly more of a hindrance than a help. And so I asked ChatGPT, hey, how do I delete documents? How do I delete these documents out of the GPT? And it goes, oh, that's a very great question. It always tells you how smart you are for asking questions. Oh, that's a great question. What a genius question you just asked me. What you have to do is go to the document dash management dashboard. And I'm like, great, where's that? And he goes, well, if you look over on the left hand side, you'll see there's a drop down menu, and you click on that, and it's like, hey, there's no drop down menu on the left hand side. And he goes, of course, I'm sorry about the misunderstanding. There is no drop down menu on the left hand side. And this is GPT. So I went back and forth for 45 minutes looking for this dashboard before the GPT finally said, you know what, you're right. There is no document dashboard. That doesn't exist. That is a minor drawback to the interface for ChatGPT. And so I'm bringing all this up to let you know that it was ChatGPT, it was AI that told me about the dashboard. And then 45 minutes later, I finally got it to say, "Oh, you know what? There isn't actually a dashboard. I was totally lying about all of that." And so I asked it. I said, "Why would you tell me there's a dashboard when there isn't one?" And
Yeah.
it says, "You're right. That's a great question. What I should have said was this." And it's like, yeah, you should have said that, but it didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not going to be taking over the comedian's job, at least anytime soon.
It's not going to take over the comedian's job. I don't think it's going to take over. It is a tool that can assist human beings in doing creative endeavors. It's helpful for that. It's helpful for recognizing patterns. It's helpful for summarizing documents.
Yeah.
If you've got this disjoint, if you're working on a book and you've got a bunch of disjointed, it can bring all those together and suggest. It's wonderful for that.
Yeah.
Um, but it still requires a human mind with a soul that's able to look at what AI gives you and decide whether it's useful or not.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Okay, very good. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up? Any other thing on your website you wanted to talk about? You're pretty much local to Indiana. Do you have any shows coming up that we can highlight?
Um, I do the shows that are coming up now are going to be like out of the country.
Okay.
I think I have one coming up in August that's local here in Kokomo, and the shows are on my website. There's a calendar there,
Mhm.
and you can see where I'm gonna be. But yeah, if anybody's interested in talking comedy, taking a workshop, I've also got one-on-one consultations that I'll do. If you've got anything that you want to pick my brain for,
Yeah.
that's available as well. So
Yeah. Well, if anyone watching or listening has not heard of John Branyan, you should at least go to YouTube and check out a few of his comedy specials and bits because he is very funny and we are very happy to have him today on the Love of Life podcast.
it was great being here in your living room or your den.
The living room.
Is it the living room?
It is. It is.
I see the babies are not asleep yet too.
No, he's not, but he can come and say hi here real quick as
Saw
we
one child carrying another child. Yep, that was it.
it's
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yep, he doesn't look tired at all.
Five.
Normally he goes to bed at 6:30. He just did not want to miss you.
Well,
Well, I already told him
I do not believe that.
I don't know if it was hockey or John Branyan. I don't know what it was, but
Yeah, I
That's
don't know.
awesome.
So is this the 5 month old? Is that right?
Yep.
Um,
This is the 5-month-old. This is Noah.
he looks like he's uh, a pretty chill and mellow guy on average. Is that correct?
I think you have to be when you're baby number 6. It's just like in your DNA. It's
Right.
what
It's like
happens.
for,
he knows he has to wait his turn. He knows that no one's going to come running. That
for
there's a
us,
lot of other stuff.
for us, he is not that child.
No. Do you have that child?
Oh, yes, we have that child. Yes.
Any child of ours that is the age of 2 is that child, at least for sure while they're 2.
So you had that 5 times, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's quite interesting. But John, it has been a sincere pleasure.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. This was fun. We'll do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Let's do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.